Ja, herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe SI Talk und bin nach wie vor in Vancouver. Und heute haben wir eigentlich eine sehr interessante Firma, weil die nämlich ein Name Change gemacht haben. Your new name is now?
American Tungsten.
American Tungsten. Tungsten ist ja das Einzige, wo wir Österreicher auch wirklich eine Idee haben, weil wir ja auch eine Tungstenmine haben in Mittersil, die macht ungefähr 6-7% der Weltproduktion. Und Tungsten gehört allerdings auch zu den kritischen Mineralien und das könnte in den nächsten Monaten gerade mit dem neuen Präsidenten sehr spannend werden. Meredith, thank you for your time. And I said in my German introduction, tungsten is the only commodity where the Austrians have also a little bit of clue about it. We have a Mittersil tungsten mine.
Okay.
We produce around 6-7% of the world tungsten.
Really? Okay.
And it's very interesting mine. When you be there, it's very nice. You don't see the mine.
Right. Oh, nice.
This edge on the national park, it's nothing.
Perfect.
I cannot find it in the first time when I will look at there. Where's the mine?
Okay, that's interesting.
So, but that is Mittersil tungsten. And I say also, tungsten is one of the materials where maybe have a really interesting future, especially with new President Trump. When he with trade wars, maybe we don't know how China react, what they are doing on tungsten.
Right.
So maybe there are really a lot of focus coming back to this. So, but now the floor is yours. What is American Tungsten and what stands for?
Okay. Thanks, Joe. It's a pleasure to meet you and pleasure to do this interview, and I'm happy to be here. The company's called American Tungsten. We're listed on the CSE market in Canada. We're also listed in the German market as well. I can't remember the symbol. I apologize. But also on the OTCQB. The company was formed about 18 months ago. It was has another asset in it, an iron ore mine in northern BC. I started working with K2 Capital, who, basically had the control of the company. They asked me to look for a critical mineral situation. I've been doing a lot of work in the United States over the past 20-25 years. I've made a lot of contacts down there. We've put 2 mines into production in the U.S., both precious metal mines, one very successful. So through that experience, I've made a lot of contacts with different people and geologists, mining engineers, and so on and so forth. So one of the people I went to was a gentleman we bought another mine from. And I approached him. His name's Hart Batis. And I approached Hart and I asked him if he had anything in the tungsten space. And as you know, I thinking that he might know where a property was, had no idea he actually owned one. So he informed me that him and another guy I knew very well, Joe Bargewich is the gentleman's name, and Joe was our mining engineer at one of the projects. Joe's a very capable mining engineer. They both owned this historic tungsten mine called the Ima mine. Mm-hmm. So I started asking him about it, and then he said, well, you better talk to Joe, because Joe's a mining engineer. He can give you a good picture of what the mine looks like. And so I phoned Joe up, and Joe informed me that Inspiration Development, a subsidiary of Anglo American, had North American operations based, the head office was, I believe, out of Seattle. They had come in 1979 and leased it from the Bradley Mining Company, which was the previous owner, and they're the ones that produced tungsten from 1945 to 1957, roughly. They acquired the mine in 1935, but World War II happened, and they didn't come back in there until 1945. So Inspiration did a very, very good job, according to Joe. He said they rehabbed 2 levels in the mine, the D level, which is the uppermost level, and I think it's the 0 level, which is underneath that. So that intrigued me, because if you have a good rehab done, that gives us access, which is, I think, way better than drill results, if you can actually go underground and see what everything looks like. Sure. So that was exciting. And then he told me that they did a pretty decent drill program on it and a pretty decent sampling program. So we didn't really know, what that meant yet. But, having the historic information is very, very valuable, Joe. It can save us millions of dollars. So that, that was exciting. So I asked Joe if he could come for a site visit to the mine, and he said absolutely. So he lived in Bullhead, Arizona, and I thought he was going to fly, but he actually drove. It's almost a 2-day drive. He drove up there because what he had from the historic documents was he had basically a truck full of information for us. So he arrived on site with all this information, and we've engaged a very good geologist. His name's Austin Zinzer. He's our VP of Exploration. Austin comes from the Perpetua gold stibnite property, which is in Idaho. So he was doing a little work on, call it contract work with different firms. I asked him if he would be available to work with us. He said, absolutely. We'll see what it looks like. So Austin, another gentleman by the name of Bill Breen, who's a geologist, myself, and Joe went on this site visit. So when we started to see the information and started to, look at it, and with the idea of taking that historic information, then digitizing it, and from that we can create a computer model of the mine and see what it looks like. But the really interesting thing for myself, and I'm not a mining guy, I'm more or less on the management side, but I do know operations. But when I started to hear Austin get excited about the information that he was looking at, like we had Inspiration's section maps of where they drilled, we had their drill collar locations, we have the Bradley Mining did 252 drill holes in there, and more importantly is the fact that what they had was this sampling program. They took 650 chip samples and channel samples on these veins. The veins more or less are in the mountain. They're identified, there's 7 of them, so they run parallel to one another. They developed 5 different levels in the mine, so they drove 5 different portals into the side of the mountain so they could access these veins, with, of course, workings going from one to the other underground. So, when I started to look at it, started to see this, what they call a stope map, how it's all laid out, where the resource was in the mine, and started, as we started to uncork some of this information, it became more and more intriguing, more and more exciting at what we're looking at. So Inspiration, what they had, and Joe told me this. Joe said, Murray, they've driven what they call raises on ore. So what that means is they've driven a raise up on the ore. That gives the miners access to start stoping the mine, or that ore or that vein in that particular area. So that told me that they were setting it up to start mining it again. So they spent a lot of money, did a lot of sampling, and we even discovered Inspiration's mine plan. So they had laid out exactly what they were going to do, how they were going to do it. We've even got assay results from the metallurgical testing they've done on the ore, and we could see the recoveries that they had. This isn't 43-101.
No, for sure.
I want to make sure of that, but it does come from a reputable mining company, and there's, we have to verify it all, but there is good information there that we can use, especially when we go up planning. So, I think what we can do then from that information is, build our own plan, probably using a lot of Inspiration's ideas and data that they had. They even had, what you would call a pre-economic assessment of the thing, because they'd worked out the costs on all these different areas, and they were actually planning. The drift that they have in there now is a 8x7 drift, so it's a decent sized drift. Like that's kind of an ore heading drift that you would make. Something like that would cost $800 to $1,000 a foot. Inspiration was planning on building a new haulage drift in the mine, which told me if they're going to make that kind of a capital intensive investment in it, that they thought it was good. So that drift was going to go at least 2,000 feet, 2,500 I think, and something like that would cost in excess of $2,000 a foot in today's dollars. So they're going to make a pretty sizable financial commitment to putting this back into production. What I believe happened is they closed the Seattle office, so they shut down operations in that area of the United States. They had a few operations in the Nevada area. I know one guy that worked for them at that time. Also, the Chinese had flooded the market on the tungsten side of things, and they collapsed the prices. A lot of the tungsten mines shut down there in the early 80s. So what I think is fortunate for us is they didn't get to mine it. They did the work, they did the planning, they did the assaying, they did the drilling, and we have the benefit of all of that information. So they didn't get to mine it, so I think, you know, realistically, I think we could walk in there and have a very good idea of what we need to do. We actually did do an underground assessment about 6 weeks ago. We engaged a mining engineer by the name of David Sabrin. Very experienced mining engineers, put a few mines and run a few mines, and you know, very experienced guy underground. So I got Dave in there along with Austin. They went into the mine, took a look at it. The ventilation was very good, so they had no issues with the air quality. They did see the rehab that Inspiration did, and it was perfect. I've got video of it that looks tremendous. So they walked in roughly, I think, around 2,000 feet into the mine, and they could see the veins. They could see where it was mined previously back in the 50s by Bradley. They could see where Inspiration had the panels set up to start mining. And another interesting thing we found is that they had actually written the sample numbers on the wall. When I mentioned they took 650 chip and channel samples, well, that sample number's on the wall, so we could go back in and take a sample and then compare it to what they had to say what a new assay would be. So it's going to be, you know, I think a tremendous amount of information that we can use for our own planning. And I think another thing that we can do with that information is we can verify the historic information that they had there by twinning some of the drill holes, and then, you know,
that was one of my questions. If you must do for a 43-101 that was not exist in these old days, that are established in the last 20 years ago. So if you need, what you must do that you confirm the old work, or how many percentage, or how many drills you must drill that you can confirm, or how many samples you must take?
I don't think a lot. I don't think you have to spend a lot. That's up to the guys authoring the 43-101. You know, but I think if we twin some holes, like we know where the collar locations is, so we can, you know, re-drill that, and if the assays come up very, very close, that's going to give a lot of credibility to it. And if we can, you know, whether we have to drill 4 or 5 holes or 6 or 7, I don't know. And I don't know how many samples we might have to take, but if they start matching up right from the get-go, that tells you that, hey, you know, this is pretty accurate information.
But the percentage of tungsten
in this mine?
Yeah.
It's the Bradley Mining Company had it at roughly 0.5 of 1%, so a half of 1%. It had a very nice silver credit, almost 2 ounces, and it's got some moly, copper, lead, and zinc in it. So it's a polymetallic kind of deposit. Inspiration did, with their drilling and the information they did, they came up with a 0.63 of 1%. So their numbers were a little higher than Bradley. You know, that's more than a little higher. It's like 20% higher, actually. And the silver was around 1.79 ounces per ton. Now, the other thing that happened that we got a hold of is when Inspiration was drilling these quartz veins that we're mainly looking at in the mountain, they were drilling and call it in the valley, and they hit a 12.5-foot wide vein in that area that was running 1.7% tungsten, like triple the grade, and almost 4 ounces silver, and another vein 4.5 feet wide that was 1.5% tungsten and 3 ounce silver. So I think that's a very good drill target for us to create some excitement and start to.
But do you have these extensions?
No, we don't. But I mean that gives us a good starting point. I think we got a couple of holes in there. I think it shows some very good.
No, but the ground is in your property.
Yes,
so
it's
covered.
Yeah.
So it's for sure you must drill for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's covered through your concession.
Yeah, the claims we have there are on our claims. The other thing that I can mention is the previous. When I mentioned Joe Bargewich, he was running a company, and the reason he had the property was he was running a company called Gentor Resources back in 2006, 2008. That's when molybdenum hit $44 a pound. So they were drilling this. There's a very good moly system on the property. It's actually a moly tungsten porphyry.
Okay. So
we sit in what they call the Idaho porphyry belt. So we've got the porphyry in the valley, let's say, and we got the tungsten quartz veins in the mountain. So we've got 2 systems on the property. Now the last drill hole they drilled into the molybdenum was 367 feet of roughly 0.25% moly, which is a very good intersection. So we've got the moly feature, and there's a tungsten credit along with that moly. So we've got some other things to take a serious look at. But I think that adds more value to the property, that we've got these 2 different kinds of assets. I should say 3. You got the silver, the tungsten, and the moly, all in this one area. So I think we've got a very, very exciting property.
So, but what do you plan then now for this year?
Well, I think for the balance of the winter, let's say, I think we want to take the historic information, we want to digitize it, and then put that into a 3D model. We're in the process of authoring another 43-101. We just had the geos on site last week, I think it was. They were down there. So we got that underway. I think we want to take that information and then do some planning on what we're going to do in the spring.
Okay.
You really don't want to do too much in the winter because of the snow cover and whatnot. It's okay if you got all the equipment in. We don't have any equipment on site yet. But I think, we wait for spring, and then, this will give us the time we need to plan where we should drill or what we should do next, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, whether it's sampling, I mean, we have very good access to those 2 upper levels. Whether it's drilling, those things need to be determined, but I think it gives us lots of options. Myself personally, right now I'm leaning to maybe add, verifying that historic resource, because that would give us a lot of credibility in the marketplace as far as an actual.
Was there a previous resource calculation on it?
Yeah, there was.
So, but you don't want to tell us?
No. Well, no, I can mention. Okay, I can mention this. This is what I can tell you. The Bradley Mining Company, and that was verified by Gentor. Gentor had a 43-101, and they did it on the molybdenum because that's what they were interested. They weren't interested in tungsten. But in that report, the author of that report was Wardrop Engineering, which I think is now owned by Tetra Tech. So it's a very reputable company. They gave credit, and they prefaced it with it was historic, but they said it was around 355,000 tons of material that was averaging about 0.5% tungsten and almost 2 ounce silver. Mm-hmm. So in that range, Inspiration had a much higher number because they did a lot more drilling. But before I start talking about that,
no, for
publicly,
sure, fair enough.
I want to have that verification.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. But for us, it's only to have an idea, and also.
Yeah. There's at least 350,000 tons.
But but there's understandable that is a lot of work is done in the past by a previous company, and you get benefit of it. That we can say. Okay. But in general, it's a brand new company. What this looks like, the share structure looks like now.
It looks really good. I think we got a low capitalization. We only have 22 million shares outstanding. It started off with 15. They just completed a financing, issued 8 million shares for roughly $2 million. They completed about 2 weeks ago, a week ago, I think. That gave the necessary money to get the 43-101 and some other work done. So I think the stock was around 93 cents as we speak, 95 maybe it closed at. So the market cap would be roughly around, say 20 million, 20 million Canadian dollars. I don't know what that would be, around 12 million euros, I guess. So, not very high at all. When you look at, there's some comparables out there, some other tungsten situations that have much higher market caps. One of them is got a $63 million market cap, and it's a greenfield. It's an exploration, deal. We have a brownfield situation. I think we're much far advanced. And I think one of the strengths we have, if we can start to verify the information we have, Joe, I think one of the things I think is going to be really good about this situation is we have, I think, an asset that the DOD would probably, I'm talking about the Department of Defense, would have a very good interest in as far as getting something on track to actually produce some tungsten. There is not 1 pound currently produced in North America. So You know, it's a critical mineral to the defense. Yeah.
Is the infrastructure, how's the infrastructure looks like?
The infrastructure is really good. I'm glad you asked me that question. You know, first of all, we're sitting in the United States, you know, probably one of the top 3 jurisdictions in the world. US, Canada, maybe Australia, okay, in that order. I don't know if that's the right order or not, but it's something like that. And then we're in probably one of the top 3 states of the US. We're in Idaho, which I would say the 3 top ones are Nevada, Arizona, and Idaho. They just announced the permitting of the Perpetua stibnite mine, which is a antimony gold deposit with, I think, 5 million ounces they've drilled out. That just got the green light, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So we're in Idaho. We have a major county road to the property. There's a great road coming from the county road right to the mine site. One thing that I was very impressed is the owners have kept the power on. The utility wanted to take the power lines out, obviously for liability reasons. They elected to keep paying the monthly payments to the power company to keep the infrastructure in place. That would take millions of dollars to replicate that, putting that power in. So that's in place. And it's about 40 miles from another mining community called Chalice. So there's a pretty good town, you know, not that far away, where you've got good equipment supplies, you've got good miners. There's lots of good miners in that area, equipment, the ancillary, support with the supplies you need, like steel and all the other things that you need. That's all close by, and it's got a house on the property, a 3-bedroom house.
Okay.
So that's a place for the geo to stay, or the mining engineer, or whoever we have there. And then it also has a very good, it's not an old house, it's a fairly modern home. And then they built a very nice shop there. The shop has the Gentor drill core stored inside. It's got a core cutting facility. It's got ventilation, good lighting, good heat, shower. Very nice facility for an office and what else. So we got a little bit of infrastructure there already to work with, which is nice.
That's good.
Yeah, and actually, the interesting thing about this property, in the county, this is zoned mining. So It's not zoned residential or whatever.
Okay.
The land use is zoned mining. So, we're sitting on, like I said, on patented mining claims. So from a permitting standpoint, this is as good as it gets.
Yeah, that was my next question coming to permitting.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we even have to do anything for a drill permit. I think because we're on patented ground, I think we might have to post a bond of some sort, a reclamation bond.
Okay.
Those aren't too expensive. I think they're around $7,000 to $10,000 each. So, that's not too onerous. I think we can put that together pretty quickly. So we could put a drill on there very quickly. The other thing I want to check out is Inspiration put underground drill stations in. So we want to take a look at those and how they're set up, so we could put an underground drill which doesn't require any kind of permitting.
Yeah.
So and then I think what we'll do is we'll start a baseline for the water quality in the area and start all that process. One of the things that I've learned in the business is, from a permitting standpoint, we're very fortunate. We hired a former DEQ inspector to do all our permitting, so we never were offside with anything as far as the regulatory people were concerned. And we hired a former MSHA inspector to be our safety guy. So we try and cover as much as we can to be compliant.
And it looks like that it looks very well structured.
Yep.
Thank you for the first introduction. I hope
Thanks,
you can remember me all the information now. I
Yeah.
try it now. So, American Tungsten, wissen wir, es geht um Wolfram. Wolfram ist wird vom Militär geliebt, weil es so schwer ist. Wolfram ist für das Militär extrem notwendig. Er hat auch kurz das Militär ins Spiel gebracht, und ich glaube auch, dass ist im Critical Metals Act, dass das einer der wichtigsten Commodities ist und deswegen werden sie dort auch möglicherweise gewisses Funding auch bekommen. So, aber das Wichtigste, wie sind Sie zu dem Projekt überhaupt gekommen? Also er ist eigentlich beauftragt worden, eigentlich im Critical Metals Area was zu suchen und hat dann natürlich durch seine Kontakte, was er gehabt hat, weil er schon 2 Minen aufgebaut hat und, hat er natürlich wahnsinniges Netzwerk gehabt und die sind auf eine alte Tungstenmine gestoßen, die in den 50er Jahren betrieben worden sind, die dann, warum weiß ich nicht genau, geschlossen worden ist. Jedenfalls hat dann eine Tochterfirma von Inspiration was a daughter company from Anglo-American. Inspiration hat dort gearbeitet, hat wahnsinnig viel gebohrt, über 200 Bohrlöcher, 600 Samples genommen. Es sind 5 Schächte, quasi 5 Zonen quasi abgebaut, also nicht abgebaut worden, sondern Drifts reingeschlagen worden, Stollen reingezogen. Also es sind 5 Levels von Stollen drinnen, wo sie dann direkt auch zu einem Zugang gehabt haben zum Erz. Er sagt, super aufbereitet gewesen, alles tipptopp. Sie haben einen Truck voll lauter Unterlagen, historische Unterlagen bekommen, was extrem unüblich ist mit alle, wo die Cores dementsprechend aufgezeichnet sind, wo die Bohrgrägen eingezeichnet wurden. Im Stollen waren drinnen die Design, wo welche Samples hier gezogen worden ist und waren nummeriert. So, das heißt, Sie können das 1:1 nachbilden und nachvollziehen, was die Arbeit wahnsinnig erleichtert im Nachhinein, weil Sie müssen jetzt das nicht mehr alles aufarbeiten, damit Sie eine 43-101-Studie machen können, sondern Sie müssen da nur eine gewisse Arbeit machen. Manche Bohrlöcher werden nachgebohrt, manche Samples müssen nachgebrochen und wenn die ähnlich sind wie die Ergebnisse, was die gehabt haben, dann dann ist genug Vertrauen in die alten Daten auch da, dass das in der 43-101-Studie verarbeitet werden kann. Warum ist damals die Firma überhaupt rausgegangen? Also es schaut alles so aus, als wollten sie starten mit der Mine, der Minenplan sogar, was sie abbauen wollen, wie sie abbauen wollen, welche Kosten das dort ungefähr entstehen, waren alles aufgezeichnet. Also, und nachdem dieser Tochter war von Anglo, war das sicher hohe Qualität, was die gehabt haben. Und aber Anglo hat sein Büro dicht gemacht und hat sich eigentlich zurückgezogen und hat diese Daten quasi links liegen lassen. Ist natürlich für einen jetzt ein Riesenvorteil, ist zwar 40 Jahre alt aus, aber die Daten sind natürlich extrem werthaltig. Also wie gesagt, wahnsinnig viel ist dort investiert worden. Also es steht dort ein Haus dort mit 3 Schlafräumen drinnen. Sie haben dort eine Halle quasi mit den ganzen, wo der Chor gelagert wird, der Chor geschnitten wird, mit Duschen, allem drum und drinnen. Es ist auch aus Mining Claims gekennzeichnet, nicht aus Wohnraum oder aus Tourismus-Area, sondern aus Mining Claims. Das heißt, das macht ermöglicht es, dass das viel, viel schneller bearbeitet wird. Und von daher ist es quasi eine Brownfield Operation, die jetzt dann quasi adaptiert wird, neu installiert, also neu überarbeitet wird, neue Studien dazu gemacht werden. Natürlich werden sie versuchen, was zu bohren. Und das ist nur die eine Mine, weil eigentlich gibt es eine Extension auch noch davon, wo sie Bohrlöcher gemacht haben, die den 3-fachen Gehalt, also nicht 0,5, 0,6, sondern über 1% Tungsten drinnen gehabt hat. Wobei nicht nur Tungsten drinnen ist, sondern sie haben auch noch Silber drinnen, sie haben Blei, Zink noch drinnen und Moly-Content sind auch noch da. Es gibt auch andere Bereiche, dort ist ein Moly-Tungsten mehr, also wahnsinnig viele Bereiche, was da drinnen sind. Wir haben dann geredet über die Marktkapitalisierung. Die Marktkapitalisierung ist ungefähr um die 20 Millionen Kann-Dollar, 2 Millionen haben es gerade geraced. Das reicht, damit sie jetzt einmal diverse 43-101-Studien machen können. Natürlich wollen sie wieder mehr Geld aufnehmen, ist logisch, weil sie werden es natürlich alles relativ schnell versuchen, auf einen aktuellen Stand zu bringen, weil gerade diese kritischen Metals auch im Zuge dessen, was Trump jetzt natürlich macht und möglicherweise am upcoming Trade War machen, ist das natürlich extrem wichtig. Und wie gesagt, sie haben auch schon Kontakte zum Department of Defense, die jetzt, wir wissen ja, dass die teilweise solche Projekte massiv fördern. Und das ist ein wahnsinnig advancedes Projekt, das allerdings extrem billig bewertet ist noch. Also mir gefällt das echt nicht schlecht. Ich muss mir die Company jetzt gleich mal auf die Watchlist nehmen. Ja, und das war es eigentlich von American Tungsten aus Vancouver, Jänner 2025. Ja, tschüss und Baba, danke. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And very interesting story.
Thank you.
Like it.